The teleological argument. Things are often made for a purpose. Often, but not necessarily always. One view of art is that it is purposeless and useless, not for anything at all. A table is for putting things on. A car is for riding in. The purpose of these things is, in philosophical jargon, their telos, plural teloi. And the purpose of an object can be ascertained either by asking its creator or by noticing how the object is used. Obviously, it's a lot more difficult to discern the telos of an object that is not human-made. What, for example, is a rainbow for, or a mountain, or a comet? The teleological argument looks at the world and the universe as something made. And if something has been made, it seems reasonable to believe that it has a maker. We'll begin by looking at arguments from philosophers who think we can infer God's existence as maker or designer from a reading of the world that sees it as having a telos. We'll then look at some objections to these arguments by David Hume, John Stuart Mill, and Charles Darwin. A distinction that is sometimes introduced by those who are convinced by the teleological argument is design qua regularity and design qua purpose. Design can be seen behind regularity. The opening and shutting of valves in the heart, the rotation of planets, the laws of nature. Some conclude that such regularity is evidence of an ultimate designer. Design can also be inferred from apparent purpose. If natural things seem to fit together in a very precise way, some will conclude that such an arrangement cannot be random or accidental. The dominant metaphor for the universe among many 18th century scientists was the machine. The universe was a clock with precision-made parts that fitted together perfectly, and that was invented and set going by a celestial clockmaker, God. One scientist, Pierre Laplace, accepted the regularity and purpose, but abandoned the need for an ultimate explanation. "I have no need of that hypothesis," was his reply when Napoleon asked him where God fitted into his cosmology. Thomas Aquinas argued from design qua regularity in the fifth of his 5 ways arguments for the existence of God. According to Aquinas, natural, inanimate objects act in regularity to fulfill certain ends. Since they can't achieve these ends themselves, lacking intelligence or rational powers, then something external to them must account for their purposeful behaviour. This something is called God. William Paley, 1743 to 1805, was an 18th century thinker who didn't subscribe to the Laplacian view that the universe could run itself like a clock. Instead, Paley used his famous analogy of the watch to argue that the evidence of purpose in nature pointed to an intelligent designer. As a further example of design, Paley referred to the human eye and the way in which it is adapted to light. Moving from design qua purpose to design qua regularity, he used evidence from astronomy and Newton's laws of motion to prove that there was design in the universe. From the reality of design, as he understood it, he went on to make the deduction that there must be a designer to account for it. In more recent times, Arthur Brown, writing in the 1940s, has argued, like Paley, that a feature like the ozone layer that filters out ultraviolet rays to protect life should be seen as, quote, a mighty proof of the Creator's forethought. A major critic of the teleological argument was David Hume, and he attacked some of the foundational ideas upon which the argument was built. Why should we regard the universe in the same way as a human-made object? It's illegitimate to confer purposes on something when there is no evidence that that something has been made. However, even if we do concede for the purposes of argument that the cosmos is a made artifact, the teleological argument still fails to persuade. The presence of natural and moral evil suggests that the designer is incompetent, or that creation work was done by inferior intelligence or intelligences. Hume advanced an explanation called the Epicurean hypothesis that suggested that the universe's apparent order was actually just a manifestation of random activity. Given sufficient time, natural forces will evolve into an ordered system. John Stuart Mill, 1806 to 1873, was an eminent 19th century philosopher. He did not believe that Paley's evidence for the existence of a designer pointed unambiguously to the God of classical Christian theism. Indeed, he echoed the observation that if we insist on attributing responsibility for making the cosmos to a heavenly maker, the world's many disorders and flaws indicate that the Creator is deeply flawed and inept, and certainly does not possess the traditional characteristics of being benevolent, omniscient, and omnipotent. Another challenge to the teleological argument came from the work of Charles Darwin, 1809 to 1882, and his successors. In The Origin of Species, 1859, Darwin argues that the order and design we see in all forms of life can be explained by reference to a self-ordering process in nature. Darwin argued that there are random variations in the genetic makeup of the members of a species. Those variations that give the best advantage to a plant or animal in the struggle for survival will gradually be inherited by more and more members until the successful characteristics become a property of the whole species. By natural selection, then, particular variations affect a gradual transformation in the appearance and behaviour of any species. Paley's mistake, then, is to view artefacts, including the human eye, in a completely decontextualized way. To draw analogies between eyes and complex machines, like a camera, is to compare apples and oranges. A camera has been assembled by an intelligent maker with certain purposes in mind. The eye is the product of millions of years of slow, sometimes effective, sometimes not, adaptation to changing external circumstances. No reference to external intelligence or purposes, however, is required to understand how it came to be as it is.